Lamborghini. Just hearing the word probably fills your mind with images of gorgeous Italian-crafted exotic sports cars with head-turning notes and an eye-watering price tag. But whatever you thought of, it probably wasn't this. Most of you will have heard of the Diablo or the Gallardo or the Murcielago, but before all of them, although after the tractor, the car that truly made Lamborghini what they are today was the Miura. The question then is, how did a company go from making tractors to the Miura? It all started back in 1948, when a 32-year-old Italian man born to grape farmers not too far from Bologna in northern Italy used his mechanical knowledge to found a tractor manufacturing business which prospered during Italy's post-World War II economic boom. The tractor company in question was called Lamborghini Trattori, and the man behind it was Ferruccio Lamborghini. With a tractor business booming, Lamborghini then opened an oil heater factory in 1959. But most importantly, and certainly more famously, 4 years later in 1963, he created Automobili Lamborghini. The idea from inception was to create cars to compete with established marques such as well-known Italian manufacturer Ferrari, a goal that was achieved just 4 years later in 1966 when the Lamborghini Miura stole the spotlight at the Geneva Motor Show. It was certainly a great success for Ferruccio Lamborghini, however, not a success he can actually take much of the credit for. In reality, the car was actually designed against his wishes. You see, whilst he was all for powerful cars, he also wanted them to be more sedate Grand Tourers, rather than the road-going race cars being produced by Ferrari. Luckily, as it turned out, Lamborghini's three top engineers, Gianpaolo Dallara, Paolo Stanzani and Bob Wallace, I hope I've pronounced that last one correctly, decided to stay back, working late into the night to develop something a little bit different. The name they put to this prototype was the P400, and much like their competitors Ferrari, the trio envisioned a road car with a racing pedigree, a car that people could watch win on the racetrack and then fly past them on the highway back home. All they had to do was convince the boss of their vision, prove that the car wouldn't cost too much and didn't affect the company's primary focus. The exact details on what brought Lamborghini around are hard to find. Perhaps when he first laid eyes on the unique mid-engine layout, the unusual V12 that was effectively merged with the transmission and differential, or perhaps he simply admired and respected the dedication that the three had shown. Whatever the reason, he did finally get on board and saw the P400 at the very least as a valuable marketing tool. The car's styling was to be handled by Carrozzeria Bertone, who specialised in car styling. The doors, when opened, were said to resemble a bull's horns, and the little plastic fins around the headlights were supposed to look like eyelashes. Little details like this definitely helped make the styling unique and memorable, but most importantly, the end result was simply stunning. It's also worth noting that Bertone was just 22 years old when he designed this. Completion date was set as the 1966 Geneva Motor Show, where the completed prototype would first be displayed, a time frame that proved to be somewhat problematic. The styling was finished just days before the show, and with such a tight schedule, nobody had actually checked to see if the engine would even fit the body. Unsurprisingly, it wasn't a straight bolt-in, and with the deadline looming, they were forced to fill the engine bay with ballast and keep the bonnet locked so nobody could see in. That wasn't actually the first time Lamborghini had done that either. 3 years prior, they did the exact same thing at the launch of the 350 GTV. The P400 was received very well at the car show, and the next year the car entered production with its new name, the Miura, a name taken from the famous Spanish fighting bull, which also features in the company's badge. The car gained international fame when it was chosen to be used in the opening sequence of the original 1969 film, The Italian Job. Now, as good as the Miura is, there were a few things that weren't quite as good. Being a pioneer of the mid-engine sports car, they did have to deal with some teething problems. For example, having the engine and all the weight behind the driver meant that the front of the car was very light. So light, in fact, that at high speeds the front of the car would actually lift up a bit, and with the fuel tank right over the front wheels, it was a problem that only got worse the more fuel you burnt. I'm no mechanical engineer, but that's not going to help with the car's handling very much. The undersized tyres in the first version, just 205mm wide, wouldn't have helped there either. There was also an issue with the carbies. 6 Webers were used to fuel the big V12. The problem with them is that these carburetors were made for racing, and much like a lot of things that were made for racing and not the road, they didn't work very well sitting at idle. You see, at idle, the carbies would slosh a bit of fuel out onto the hot engine, and this had a tendency to catch fire. Not what you want from your expensive and exclusive Italian sports car. These things aside, what the people who were lucky enough to have one of just 275 P400s produced were getting was a 3.9 litre V12 engine that was transversely mounted behind the driver and produced an immensely impressive, for 1966, 257 kilowatts or 345 horsepower in old money. But what they really got was so much more than horsepower numbers and a sideways engine, more than a firebomb with pretty eyelashes. They got an icon, and one of the most stunning cars ever produced.